Audio check. Audio check. Excellent. Alright, good evening everyone. My name is Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU University, and tonight we're going to play some red-white D&T of some nature. So I want to start with where we left off last time, and then get into the new stuff. So here's what I've been playing for the last couple of weeks, the Dire Fleet Daredevil build of Death and Taxes. To just pull up the data here and just very quickly walk through it, we ended up 20 and 15 with an overall win rate of 57% with this deck over 35 matches. That's not good. Like, it's not abysmal, but it's not as high as pretty much any of my other builds were. So I'm relatively disappointed by that overall. That being said, we did 5-0 last night. And I want to highlight one thing from that real quick because it was amazing. So here was the highlight of last night's stream for anyone who didn't see it. The situation was that I know my opponent has a lightning bolt in hand, and so if they just get to lightning bolt my creature that has Jitte on it, I'm going to just lose the game to this like true name nemesis. That's more or less where I'm at. So I vial in the Aether Vial in response to them fetching with their Scalding Tarn, and I get to stifle their fetch land. It was pretty dirty, it was pretty disgusting. That was sort of the absolute highest upside Dire Fleet Daredevil had ever had. Like, there were a couple other cool moments, like where I got to go and lightning bolt my opponent for lethal when they had a relatively stable board, or like there were a couple of times where it just being a first strike guy was really relevant once I had a couple of pieces of equipment. But overall, I was not overly impressed with Dire Fleet Daredevil as a consistently powerful card. Basic Plains, this is not the bonus stream. This is my evening plans kind of fell through, so like, why not stream? So I have a follower count up at the top for anyone who doesn't know what's going on. And every 50 followers, I'm going to do a bonus stream that week that is just, you know, something I wouldn't have done normally. So I'm 10 followers away from doing a bonus stream, and I think I've said the first one was going to be with Mono White Death and Taxes. Let me just double check that here. Yeah, so first one is with Mono White D&T, which people have been asking for a while, because I haven't been streaming that. I've been just streaming Red-White. The second one will be with Wingmare D&T, or we'll just jam 4 Thalias, 4 Wingmares, and go to town on people. The third one will be with Judge's Familiar D&T, because, like, hooting people is fun. And then when I hit the big 500, which is, you know, I think a reasonable goal, I will do a Tin Fins stream. My roommate has Tin Fins on Moto, so I could borrow that and figure out what all's going on there and have a blast. I own Tin Fins in real life, and I play it sometimes. So, like, I won't be tripping all over myself or anything like that. So, overall, I'm unimpressed with the Dire Fleet Daredevil build. I think the card is awkward on a number of levels. It's awkward with Thalia, it's awkward with Rest in Peace. Rest in Peace and Daredevil want to come in for a lot of the same matchups. So, overall, I'm not particularly happy with it. And so I think I'm going to drift away from testing with Daredevil for a little while. So let's look at my previous red-white build. I have been pretty happy with this build. I ended up with a win percentage in the like low to mid 60s. You know, ideally I'd like to be at 66%, but that's a little ambitious. You know, so if I'm like maybe like 63% plus, I'm pretty happy with the build. I did some thinking today about like where I wanted to take this list, and I think I've come to a couple of conclusions. So conclusion number 1, I'm almost always boarding out Palace Jailer for game 2 and 3 scenarios against a bunch of the format, and that might mean that like Palace Jailer should just go. It is a powerful card with high upside, although it's a card that like you kind of have to be in the right spot to play. So that might be like Direfleet Daredevil territory, where like, yes, the card can do amazing things, but it won't always. And maybe I'm supposed to just like take this jailer out of the deck and play something else. So that's thing number 1 I've been thinking about. Thing number 2, when I was playing the Direfleet Daredevil build, I cut a port for a cavern, and I think I like that change more generally. The deck is a little bit the deck is a little bit mana hungry, like no matter what iteration you're playing, and just always having consistently good mana is very nice. Like, I can't overstate how good that is. So I've been kind of curious if, like, I should just make that change more generally, and so I think I'm going to go ahead and start with that. So I think I want to pull this port and run a 3rd cavern. And I'm not sure what I want to do with this Palace Jailer. And I'll talk through a couple of things. So Basic Plane says, I came to the same conclusion with Jailer. I haven't wanted against the majority of the format, sans miracles, and even then it's flaky. Yeah, so a lot of people tell me that like Jailer is just the bee's knees. It's just the stone cold nuts against miracles and check pile. But then like end of turn Snapcaster, take the crown, and the game is over. It's awkward. So I really like it for some matchups, like against a deck like Eldrazi. It is just disgustingly good. Like being able to just like get rid of Reality Smasher without using an extra card or something of that nature is pretty nutty. So, like, what do I like about Jailer? I like the fact that it's a human, so it works well with the Cavern of Souls synergy. I like the fact that it's removal. And I like the fact that it gets, like, some Recruiter of the Guard value. Those are the things I like about it. But I'm not sure that this is a card that I need. So I'm gonna pull that for the deck for a league or two and see how I feel without it. Then the question is, what do I do from there? So looking at the sideboard, I kind of have like this sweet package for like controlling decks that I get to bring in to just give me all sorts of additional value. I have a good amount of additional removal in these 3 Path to Exiles here, and Rest in Peace is a good generic value card against a bunch of the format. So I feel like I have most of my bases covered between the main deck and sideboard. I think like there are a couple of cards I consider, and a couple of different ways I could go. Number 1, I could like promote the Mirran Crusader back to the main deck. That's reasonable. Number 2, I could add a Sanctum Prelate somewhere in the 75, be that main deck or sideboard. Number 3, I can add a Restoration Angel to the main deck. So looking at the deck list I was running previously, I decided that I wanted to run a Restoration Angel. And that might seem a little weird, but I think it makes a lot of sense. So Restoration Angel is a flyer that dodges Bolt and Decay. You need Revolt with Fatal Push in order to get rid of it. It gives huge value with like Stoneforge and Recruiter of the Guard and Flicker Wisp and P and K, and minor value with some other cards like Revoker and Relic Warder. I think a lot of the format right now is the sort of like grind you out mid-rangey decks, where like we saw one of my like Grixis Delver opponents last night just playing like a Braid in the main deck as well as multiple copies of True Name. And so in a world where everyone is trying to like outvalue each other with cards like Leovold, Baleful Strix, and things of that nature, just having a big beefy card might not be bad. So I'm not sure that Restoration Angel is necessarily good, but like it is something that is like seriously on my plate to consider. With the red-white build, you don't always want a prelate in your deck. It's not as necessary as it is in the mono-white version, because Magus of the Moon tends to play a similar role that Prelate does, where it's sort of this game-ending, flop it on the battlefield, see if everything is over card. And Prelate does that same job. But in this shell, I have these 2 Vryn Wingmares in the main deck, and against a lot of decks, curving a Thalia into a Wingmare is just too much disruption for them to get through in the first place. So in the mid-range world that we live in, a Restoration Angel in the main deck might be reasonable. That might be ambitious. You know, there's no guarantee that I can always cast it, but it might be good. So again, choices are play a prelate in the 75, move a Crusader to the main deck, move a Recruiter to the main deck, and like if I just like moved one of those cards to the main deck, I would just like add in some generically good sideboard card, you know, like a Manriki Gusari or a Sword of War and Peace or something like that, that would patch up like some random matchup. But I kind of want to try out the Restoration Angel some more. I suspect it might be fine. You might ask, like, why do I want to do that over a Flicker Wisp? The single white symbol is really the answer there. Sorry, I'm just gonna shut that off there. So I think I want to run one league like this and see how I feel about it. And if I don't like the Restoration Angel, I'll probably drop that and then like try Crusader in the main deck. Some people have also suggested a third Magus of the Moon somewhere in the 75. And I've talked to some people about that, and that was something that I suggested myself. I mentioned the idea to Mark Koenig about Bahra, and he said he didn't particularly like it. He didn't elaborate why, but like after giving it some more thought, like there are a lot of games where when we have Magus and we just want to slam it on 3, we don't necessarily have a Plains yet. And if we play too many copies of Magus, then we might run into that situation a little bit more. So without further ado, I think I'm just going to go ahead and jam a league with this and see how I feel. Volume's fine. I don't know how much I'm going to play tonight. Like, I might do a whole league, I might just do a couple of matches, you know, it'll depend on how the matches go, how long they go, and whether or not anything else randomly appears for me to do. Lewis MJ. I have no real data on my opponent. They've been seen playing Delver, 4-color control, Elves, and Miracles recently. So if I have a respectable hand, I will just keep it. So it'll be on the draw. This is reasonable. It's not like insane or anything, but it is a Vial-based start with cards that matter. Alright, my opponent is still on Miracles. Portent targeting themselves. I don't love this matchup. I've talked about this a little bit in a couple of places, but I think the Miracles matchup is much, much harder than it used to be. I'm going to fetch out a basic Plains first to hedge around back to basics in some degree. I hate that Miracles is playing that frequently in the main deck now. It's just cripplingly good. Speaking of really good cards that didn't used to be in the deck. So I'm going to put this on Artificer because it lets me do both Stoneforge and P&K, uncounterable. And we're going to get the Sword. That's the card we want long term in this matchup. So long term in this game, my plan is to win the game with P and K and Ether Vial activations. This is probably just going to eat a counterspell, but yep. I don't have anything else to do with my turn, though, if I don't cast that. So the upside of me casting that and it resolving and, like, I get to just, like, put a Thalia into play there as well is very, very high. I can jam P and K with Flicker Wisp backup here, and, like, it's uncounterable and I can protect it from one thing, but I can't protect it from multiple things. I kind of want to just get the sword in play instead. Alright, so that's going to be Snapcaster, Counterspell. Again, still fine. And I'm going to decrease the chance of my opponent resolving a Jace right here by Flicker Wisping out one of their lands. On my turn, I'll be casting P and K with Karakas backup and a Vial on 4 so that I can, like, have P and K in play. If my opponent removes it, I can bounce with Karakas and then redeploy. And this will put my opponent in a pretty bad spot where they would need something like Terminus and Swords to Plowshares in order to get rid of my P and K. Their Brainstorm is very, very difficult. So I don't know that everything is, like, nice and clear cut and easy for them over there. They're taking their time and thinking about something. Like, I don't know if they're, like, thinking about whether or not they, like, need to mill one of these on their next turn with Search for Escanta, or whether or not, like, they want to fetch or leave themselves open. But something is probably wrong over there. There's some portion of their hand that doesn't seem right. And we'll take that. Oh, Jitei's really good, actually. I might just, like, cast Jitei, equip Jitei, and make them use a card on the Flicker Wisp. Again, since I have my red sources already, I'm going to go ahead and just get a basic Plains to just hedge around my opponent having back to basics. Alright, there's a source to plowshares. Great. Alright, so this is the point where the search for Escanta flips. Assuming my opponent wants it to flip. Like, they might not. They might value the scry machine more than the land. Alright, great. Entreat the angels. I'm going to do something that looks a little weird, and I'm going to bounce this right now, because I think I need to be bouncing it. And I'm just going to bounce it before my opponent has the opportunity to, like, path to exile it in response to me bouncing. I'll trade a Thopter. That's fine. We can say always no, I have no 5-drops. So Flicker Wisp is decent. I can Flicker Wisp to kill an angel, equip a Flicker Wisp with a Jitte, and then still have P and K available to me. That all sounds grand. I might just do my whole, like, P and K bounce thing again here before my opponent can, like, Swords to Plowshare it at all. I know I'm kind of playing scared of that, but, like, I just want a bunch of bodies to buy time because, like, I can beat these angels. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. Best draw in my deck right now would probably just be Wasteland to get the Search for Escanta off the table. So Flicker Wisp will block one of these. I'll double block another one. And then this will let me use my 2 Jitte counters to, like, kill both this angel and... I guess I would need to, like, triple block in order to do that, actually. Which I'm fine doing. If my opponent had Swords to Plowshares, they would have just, like, Swords to Plowshared before they made that attack at all. Oh. Cancel that. That needs to be a red. Jace. Okay. Jace Brainstorm. They predict themselves. Sure. Alright, so in response to that, I'm going to go ahead and bounce that. And put it back in. So this ensures that the Jace the Mind Sculptor dies. My opponent gets to eat one of my Thopters, which they choose not to do for some reason. Council's Judgment, you say? Slightly annoying, but not that annoying. So I can just shoot and kill my opponent's Angel here, leaving myself with like Thopter, Thopter, Jitte with 2 counters. Or no, let's do that a slightly different way. So let's shoot that Angel. I'll sacrifice a Thopter, do 2 damage to that. Shrink this. I'll shrink that again. I'll bounce P and K. My opponent predicts. They're going to look for a Swords to Plowshares to try to get P and K right now when they have the opportunity to. If they don't find the Swords to Plowshares, they're forced to kind of take this Violet 4. Still looking. Alright. So that Council Judgment resolves. They'll take the Violent 4. I'll also vote for the Violent 4. This hasn't actually solved their problem at all. If they Portent and get to Terminus me on my turn, they prevent 3 damage and get 3 Thopters off the board. Which is nice. But that's not even that scary for me. Alright, so this is a Portent targeting me, so they're going to get to see my next couple of draws. So I expect my next 2 draws to be kind of bad. Yep. Kind of bad confirmed. And now if my opponent has a terminus for their turn, which I don't think is likely, but if they do, I get to like shoot them once and then bounce the P and K. My opponent is dead very, very soon. So at 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage crashing in, and then I can throw 2 Thopters at their face. So my opponent basically is going to have like this turn and next turn to try to deal with my board before they die. So good stuff. Smells like a terminus. It's a terminus. So I can fling 2, bounce my P and K this turn, and that's a fine turn. So I'll choose you, pay red, 1/1. Sacrifice this. Target you, red, 1/1. Sacrifice this. Return P and K. Alright, there's the Swords to Plowshares. Alright. Swords to Plowshares, you know, not a great card here. Whatever my third card down is, whatever the top of my library is right now, it's probably quite good, because it's what my opponent chose to bury. Alright, my opponent has a Terminus in hand. If my opponent gets to like tap out for a Jace here or something like that and put that Terminus on top, I'm not in a great position. And if my top card is really good, they will just Fate Seal it away right now. So apparently it's not that good. So either on the top or 1 down, my opponent is going to have a Terminus. And I should plan accordingly. So my opponent knows about this Flicker Wisp, so it doesn't appear like they're particularly scared of it. We're just gonna deny my opponent a Jace activation here. Alright, they have a Scry Machine. So for now, I'll say always no to that. Wasteland is pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good. Sure. So go ahead and wasteland that. I know my opponent is just going to get a card out of it and then like flip the other one, but it's better than letting them have both the Scry Machine and the search. Alright, my opponent has started to Fate Seal me, which does not bode well. Although they put it on the bottom, which is a nice perk. If my opponent doesn't have a counterspell, this is a very good draw. Hardcast Force. You bet. I'm going to just start F6ing through my opponent's turns. It's very likely that this game could come out to a, like, one of us times out situation. So I'm going to, like, just start playing towards my clock very aggressively now. Alright. Opponent has all sorts of sweet combos here. Alright, no Moonman for me. Alright, Recruiter is solid. Unfortunately, I don't have another P and K to get since this is still game 1 somehow. On the off chance that it lives, we're going to get a Revoker. It probably won't. It most certainly shouldn't. My opponent either has a Terminus in hand or on top of library. Alright, so this is going to be the Hardcast Terminus that was in their hand. Yep. Cavern, not a great draw. Alright, yeah, we are 100% dead at this point. So, I'm just going to try to take another minute off of my opponent's clock. And I want to gain any additional information I can. I guess my opponent is going to get to see all of my tricks if I let them Fate Seal me out. So I guess I will concede. I don't want my opponent to know everything that's going on. Alright, so I'll board in P and K. I'll board in Cataclysm. I'll board in this Recruiter. Mirror Crusader is a maybe just as a generic guy who does damage. What do I want to board out? I want to board out Swords to Plowshares. It's not particularly good. And I want to board out Magus of the Moon. That leaves me with 58 cards. So I'll board in Mirror Crusader as a generic beater. And then I'll either leave in 1 Swords to Plowshares, 1 Magus, or I'll board in the Relic Warder to hit something like Back to Basics or Search for Escanta. I find Relic Warder a little awkward in this matchup. Like, I tried it, but wasn't overly impressed by it, so I might just leave that out. It feels like my opponent is playing in like an Entreat and Jace heavy version. Like my opponent looked at so many cards. If they had a mentor, they would have just played it. Like at some point that game, I think. So I don't necessarily think that I want to like leave in Swords to Plowshares hedging for mentor. Like it's possible that the rest of these cards like just aren't good enough. I could also just board in like one of random Canonist as something that effectively blanks a Snapcaster Mage and turns it into an Ambush Viper. That's reasonable. I think I'll do that. I think I want to be body heavy. Who would like to play first? Hand's great. Slow, but great. So it was game 1, loss to Jace. So although it didn't pan out, game 1 there really showcases how good P and K is. That's great. I'm gonna go ahead and get Plateau here since I might need double red. And I'm just going to get a little aggressive here. Like, my opponent can't have actual factual counterspell up right now, so I think it's fine to just jam this and get it into play. Interesting, my opponent still has counterbalance in their deck for the post-sideboard games. That seems wrong. But I don't know their 75 to know like how many cards they have to bring in. Like I think the New Miracles deck is supposed to just like take on a value-oriented role and not try to like lock me out of the game with counterbalance. I think the generic like cantrip, predict, Swords to Plowshare engine is like a-okay for doing everything they want to do and need to be doing in this matchup. So this is actually really good. I have to decide like how many creatures I want to commit right now. I'll probably wait until my opponent's draw step and then do some stuff. Like if my opponent Terminuses, that's not great for me. If I just like Recruiter for Thalia now. So I'd rather wait till their draw step. Alright, they have Terminus, which is fine. They can Terminus my Stoneforge. And now I'll do some stuff. A follow-up Terminus would be pretty hot. Oh no, they shuffle. Probably not happening. Jette's a fine draw. Alright, my opponent is conceding for clock time there. You know, I'm incredibly far ahead there, and my opponent is not coming back. So game 2, that's really a win with vials. Like, those vials let me get so aggressive there. Do I like everything that I did being on the draw? I still think so. So we're a little over a minute ahead of my opponent on time, and it takes them longer to play than us. So in terms of time, I like our position. And this hand is just fine. Like, we have an Ether Vial-based start again. Like, if I draw nothing, I'm unsure whether or not I'll just jam the Stoneforge on turn 2 or wait for turn 3 to put it in off my vial. We'll see where the hand goes. Given the way this hand is heading, I just want to deploy another vial now. I'll put Mom in on their end step, and then I'll have uncounterable Stoneforge off vial on my turn. Ooh, a Containment Priest. Sure. This is a huge tempo play. So kind of what I'm forcing my opponent to do here is go to a position where I have so many bodies on the field that they have to Terminus, and that gets rid of their Containment Priest, opening up my hand for all sorts of disgusting things. Alright, so follow-up Snapcaster Swords. Opponent opting to get a little frisky here. We'll take both of these up. Land is great. I don't think I want to trade my Stoneforge for that Snapcaster. Alright, Mentor is slightly annoying. So this requires a chump from either the Mentor or the Containment Priest. That's great. This is not what my opponent wants to see. And my opponent concedes there. So I want to explain why my opponent is conceding. On my turn, I get to fling a Thopter at their Mentor, kill it, and then my Sword of Fire and Ice gets to take over that game. So there's basically no way they're getting back in there. Alright, so that's a win. So, game 3 win with Sword of Fire and Ice on Crusader. Alright. Good stuff. Starting off strong, 1-0. For anyone who joined me before I started doing my whole thing in here, here is the deck list that we're running for tonight. We've stopped playing Direfleet Daredevil and we're going back to a more traditional build, although I'm going to try out one of Restoration Angel in the main deck. I'm going to take 30 seconds here to run to the restroom, and then I'll continue going. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. Alright, sorry about that. Here we go. Back in for round 2, currently 1-0. That was quick. Oh. We're gonna have fun this time, chat. It looks like my opponent is a Zombardment player. So for anyone not familiar with Zombardment, it is I guess a graveyard-based disruption deck that focuses on recursive threats like Gravecrawler and Bloodghast and maybe even something like Prized Amalgam to just like have threats that keep coming back and back and back. And they're cards that let my opponent generate a lot of value in odd ways that are sometimes difficult to fight. This is like literally my ideal hand against them because curving Thalia into Wingmare can make it so that a lot of their cards like Faithless Looting and Cabal Therapy lose a ton of value. I also have a Swords to Plowshares to remove one recursive idiot. I don't know what to say about like this matchup, whether it's good or bad. I'll say that I have 3 Rest in Peace in my sideboard, and 7 removal spells that exile. So I think that's all very good. This is like very potentially a bait, and like this is a card that they don't care about a ton, but it's not like I'm not going to remove a Deathrite Shaman. Like the card is very, very good. I would love confirmation that my opponent is on Bombardment, though. Like there are other decks that like fit this same pattern that my opponent might play as well. So one way or another, I would love confirmation in the next turn or two. It probably doesn't change my lines at all because like I'm still going to curve Thalia into Wingmare because that's all I have. But it'd be nice to know for sure. My opponent is also playing very slowly. Like, it's their turn 2, and they've already used up, like, 4 minutes of clock, whereas I've used 16 seconds of clock. Like, not relevant at all yet, but, like, if this pace continues, it does not bode well for my opponent, especially once I start interacting with them. It's very possible my opponent kept a bad hand with a couple of Gitaxian probes in it, hoping that their probes drew them into the right stuff, and then it didn't. And so they're wondering whether or not they need to cast this Brainstorm and try to fetch, versus like if they cast the Brainstorm and whiff, if they're just dead. Alright, since my opponent's taking forever, Zombardment has the following creatures in it, usually. Carrion Feeder, Deathrite Shaman, Gravecaller, Bloodghast. Those are the stock ones. And then after that, we usually see some other creature, and creature in big air quotes there, because it depends on what colors you're playing. Like, it can be Dark Confidant, it can be Lingering Souls, I've seen some other things as well, but those are the biggest ones. As far as spells, you get things like Cabal Therapy,
you get random entombs, which are actually for like blood gas and cabal therapies rather than like a Grizzlebrand. You'd normally see some amount of selection, you know, things like brainstorm, faithless looting, depending on which colors you're in again. And then you'll sometimes have a couple of bridge from belows to get extra value off of your creatures as they die, and then you usually have another sack outlet like Goblin Bombardment to just like kill all of your opponent's stuff. All right, see what was so hard about Cabal Therapy for Thalia there, but. Alright, Sword Splashers is a great draw. Although, awkwardly, I might not have the opportunity to cast it before my opponent gets to, like, flashback a Cabal Therapy and get my Bryn Wingmare, which is super unfortunate. Alright, so my opponent casts a Snapcaster Mage. And that targets a Taxian Probe. And since they have the opportunity to flashback this Cabal Therapy, if I give them priority, I'm going to go ahead and Swords to Plowshares that now. So now they don't get to take my Bryn Wingmare. Delver. Alright. So, after all that, my opponent is on a weird Delver deck. That's unfortunate. Spent so much time talking about Zombardment. So my opponent doesn't know about this Thalia. And they do know about the Wingmare. If they have something to flashback this Cabal Therapy with, I'd rather not let them get the Wingmare for free. So I can just like go Plains Wingmare, although that would play into a Daze, and then follow up with Thalia next turn. Or I can play like Thalia plus Caracas up this turn. With a lot of odd lines that I can take. So I think I want my opponent to wasteland this rather than the Caracas. So I think I'm going to lead on this. And I will do Thalia rather than the Wingmare. If my opponent has a removal spell and they blow it on the Thalia, great. If they don't, I have Caracas backup, and then I can like potentially trade this Wingmare for the Delver if it flips. There is also a small possibility that my opponent, like, sacks the Delver to Cabal Therapy the Wingmare out of my hand. But if that's the best they've got over there, I feel pretty great. Alright, Bolt for the Thalia. Another Delver. Deathrite Shaman. Will my opponent sack the Deathrite Shaman to take my Wingmare? Real question. Will I fall asleep before my opponent makes another play? Real question. Alright, my opponent just literally did not attack with a Deathrite there. So that was neat. I'm going to lead on the Wingmare here rather than on the Flicker Wisp, so that I can Flicker Wisp a Delver back if one flips. I do accept this trade. Still got all these Delvers. And now my opponent has to decide whether they want to blow up my Cavern or my Caracas, and they go for the Cavern. And my opponent will drain me here. Alright, my opponent has a Daze, which is a dead card at this point of the game. There is some desire to want to leave this Flicker Wisp around in case I draw a piece of equipment, but I'm in trouble in terms of like my life total, and I need to get that in check. That will do so. So we'll get rid of this guy rather than the Deathrite Shaman. The Aberration is 3 damage a turn versus Deathrite's 2 damage a turn. Deathrite also requires a mana investment every turn. So my opponent had Force plus Daze. That's fine. At this point, most of my draws are better than most of my opponent's draws, like when we just like talk about a random card in our decks. So like if I get like a Stoneforge or a Recruiter or a Revoker or a Swords or not a Caracas, most of my draws are very good. Whereas my opponent is going to like have things like Daze, Stifle, Cabal Therapy, Force that aren't necessarily very good right now. I'm also porting them off of red, so that if they draw something like a Young Pyromancer, then they have to take a turn off of Deathrite in order to play that. Since my opponent has that Cabal Therapy in their yard still, I think I want to just cast this Jitte rather than get a Batterskull
which would sit in my hand and my opponent could get rid of. I'm gonna cast this Wingmare before I do anything else, just to tax my opponent's resources a little bit more. It also lets me play around a daze like much more effectively. And this could just be like tap Deathrite Shaman for a mana, hard cast a Force on this, in which case my Stoneforge gets to get through, and so I'm fine with that. So my Stoneforge Mystic is no longer lightning boltable, which is great. And my opponent scoops it up. Alright, so my opponent wasn't on Zombardment, they were on Grixis Delver. Can't trust the internet for anything. Alright, so game one, stabilize at low life with Jete. Wasn't particularly interesting. Just kind of stock there. Alright, so we'll bring in Path. We'll probably bring in 2, maybe 3 Rest in Peace. I'll probably bring in Mirran Crusader. So these are the cards we have to pick from. I board Revoker out for this matchup. I board my Recruiters out. I board my P&K out. I probably only need 1 Rest in Peace. Or, excuse me, I probably only need to run 2 Rest in Peace. Like, it's a very, very good card in the matchup, but it's not something that you want to draw multiples of. And then I have to decide what else I want to cut. Like, it may be that this Restoration Angel is a little bit ambitious, but I want to try it out, I think. Could leave the Mirran Crusader in the board. Like, I feel like it's either Mirran Crusader or Restoration Angel. And, like, given how long that game went, like, it might not be overly ambitious to try the Restoration Angel. But maybe I'm supposed to do that when I'm on the play, not when I'm on the draw. And on the draw, I want something that can be good against, like, a random quick Gurmag Angler. But Resto is nice if my opponent true names, whereas Crusader isn't, so maybe I'll leave the Crusader there. Let's try this. So one thing I like about this build is A, this hand, and B, that with like the 3 Flicker Wisps, the 2 Rin Rares, and then that 1 Restoration Angel, I actually have a pretty respectable flyer count overall.
Alright, our vial resolved. We have a mom to put in as follow-up. I can just like hardcast this Jitte on 2. Hand seems great. Alright, opponent has Cabal Therapy, which I don't particularly care about. I will care about like Probe into Therapy though. And Pyro maybe? Ooh, Ancient Grudge. Ancient Grudge is very, very good against everything I've got going on over here. To use my mana efficiently, I'm just going to go ahead and play a Thalia this turn, I think. Although there's some merit to just like playing the Mom first, let Mom eat removal, and like this plays around Daze, whereas my other line doesn't. If my opponent had the Grudge and they had a Daze in their hand, they probably wouldn't Daze the Vial. Like, just grudging it is fine. I'm gonna play the Thalia. If I draw another 2-drop, the upside of having played the Thalia here and not wasted a mana is pretty high. I'm going to continue to operate under the assumption that my opponent doesn't have a Daze. So I wonder what my opponent is thinking about. Force, pitching a Gataxian Probe. That is fine. I was correct in that my opponent did not have a Daze. The Force was going to trade for some card at some point. That's all fine. That's wonderful. I'm going to play the Swords to Plowshares first. That's the card we care about resolving. And now we can play a Mom. So if my opponent's hand is Gas, they're a favorite to win right now. But my opponent just keeps passing. Alright, you have a Snapcaster Mage. I want to take this as a sign of weakness. Alright, so my opponent is brainstorming. This will probably take... Oh, no, that was quick brainstorm. Alright, that's a Delver. So before chat yells at me, I know full well what I'm doing here. So I'm essentially trading this Jitte for a Delver and a couple of life. My opponent has an Ancient Grudge in the graveyard. So, like, I have not forgotten about that. I know that is there. And I am fine just trading that for a Delver and 2 life and 2 of my opponent's mana. So if my opponent has something like a Young Pyromancer, it's kind of funny because they can't actually like play that and then like Ancient Grudge to get an elemental token out of it, because I will get to use the Jitte to eat their Young Pyromancer before that happens. Oh, neat. Opponent does not see that line or does not take that line. One of the two. So this should be the flashback Ancient Grudge. Sure. Since I drew another removal spell, I'm going to go ahead and push damage here with the Jitte. And my opponent gave me that option, which is weird. A lot of the lines my opponent is choosing to take are kind of weird. Like the way that my opponent is tapping their mana. This Rishadan board is kind of being a thorn in their side. And like I feel at some point that should have gotten wastelanded. Stoneforge. To play around Cabal Therapy, I'm going to get Sword of Fire and Ice, so that I can just hard cast that now.
This doesn't play around force or double days, but I think that's all fine. Drawing lots of lands. K command? K command's pretty good. Strong. Alright. You bet. That was a mistake. I shouldn't have played that land. Just for, like, K command, blow up, Stoneforge, make you discard a card reasons. We'll do this the good old-fashioned way of killing my opponent one card at a time. I'm not going to fetch to thin since my life total matters in this matchup. Like, going down to 9 is, like, one fewer hit from a flipped Delver, for example. Or, like, one fewer Deathrite Shaman activation. Alright, that is decent. So for anyone not sure what I'm doing, I'm activating Stoneforge, blinking it with Resto, getting my Batterskull, putting my Batterskull in. Oh man, I got rid of the Batterskull? That too?
I forgot about that. Alright, that's me. That's on me, chat. I missed 1 point of damage. That was almost cool. I'm not entirely sure my opponent like knows what a Delver deck is supposed to be doing. Like they keep like pondering and brainstorming to get cards, and they're cards that aren't winning them the game. Overload Electrickery. Okay. Are you going to like Lightning Bolt my Restoration Angel after that? Yep. You bet, boss. At this point, it's also very likely that my opponent is just going to time out because they've been playing so slowly. Lightning Bolt Mom, sure. Opponent, do you have threats in your deck? Because I have the next 2 covered. My opponent's like, nope, nope, not going to hardcast Force of Will. Never mind. Fork Bolt. Sure, opponent. Like, I guess I remove it. And I'll use the Swords to Plowshares on that in case they play something, you know, like a Gurmag Angler. I know I have a Rest in Peace in place, so that's a bad example, but like if they played something bigger than a Deathrite Shaman, I'd rather have this around. Young Pyromancer, you bet. I don't really care if his mom dies at this point. Like, it's irrelevant. Should have had more equipment to board in for this matchup, apparently. Yes, I'll use it. Oh, nothing here. My opponent complains in the chat about 0 cantrips after they used their first, like, 7-ish cantrips poorly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, alright. Maybe not 7. They've had 4 cantrips this game. They had their chance. So if I just like get aggressive here and just like protect my Stoneforge, I have my opponent dead in 5 turns, but they have me dead in 4 turns. So I'm not going to do that. Am I out of Stoneforges now? I'll check later.
Exciting magic going on here. The good news is that any creature I draw, I will just violin. Alright, opponent has a true name. That is legitimately annoying. Sure. So my opponent's going to get this game, and then they're going to time out game 3 because they were playing so slowly. We also drew a few lands this game. Alright, so game 2 result loss. So game 2 lost to True Name Nemesis after a long, grindy game. Does my opponent's clock situation make me change anything I want to do about sideboarding? Probably not. Actually, I would consider bringing in the third Rest in Peace to just like decrease the chance of I'm getting drained out by Death Rites, but like it's hard to do a Death Rite kill in that amount of time. I would like to play first. This hand's great. I'll keep. So my opponent took a quick mulligan there. They need to keep an aggressive hand. I'm really hoping they lead on Deathrite Shaman so that this Rest in Peace is just like cripplingly good. But it doesn't look like that's happening. So that line might have looked a little weird to anyone who was in the audience. I didn't want to fetch because like my opponent could have a stifle there, and I'm just kind of worried about long-term value in this game. That's really good. I'd be kind of mad if like my opponent manages to beat me with like 5 seconds left on the clock after like how poorly they played. It's really annoying. 3. Probably need to trade with Young Pyro to have any shot at this. Alright, and guess that's how we lose this one. It's disappointing. Like, I don't mind losing, but a boring game where I have to like sit here and like not do interesting commentary and sit here and do all of that waiting, and then to lose to a couple of like very aggressive creatures and like not drawing anything on my side is annoying. Back in we go. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, and I'm a Death and Taxes enthusiast. Tonight we are playing some Red, White, Death and Taxes. We're cutting the Darkfleet Daredevil. I don't think it's necessarily up to snuff, even though we 5-0'd with it last night. We're trying a Restoration Angel out in the main deck over what was the Palace Jailer before. I sort of have mixed opinions on Palace Jailer as well, and I'm going to try eliminating some of the cards that have like really high situational upside for just more generically good cards. Like Bryn Wingmare is pretty consistently good against most of the format since most decks are cantrip based. The Restoration Angel is maybe a little bit suspect. It's been pretty good in all of the matches that I've had it so far, though. And it has the possibilities of doing some really, really disgusting things. Last night it picked up a Sword of Fire and Ice and just like swung for 7 out of nowhere. Earlier today I got good value off of it a couple of times and could have done some other very, very strong things as well, but it didn't quite work out. You're a fan of Maverick and Nick Fit. I've played a decent amount of Maverick. Like I actually own both Maverick and Nick Fit in paper. I don't like Maverick more than D&T. Maverick has some things going for it that D&T doesn't, namely like the toolbox aspect. I enjoy Nick Fit a lot. I don't think it's a good deck, but I think it is a lot of fun to play. And I have a playset of Japanese Pernicious Deeds, so whenever I get to sleeve those up, I'm pretty happy about that. Pernicious Deed is a really disgusting magic card. It's very, very powerful. It's slow, but in the decks that can use it, it is a beating. The sort of unfortunate thing is that there aren't a lot of decks that can actually play Pernicious Deed since it sweeps so much stuff off the table. You know, it's like Nick Fit and Standstill, and then maybe occasionally a random bug control deck can run one, and that's about it, unfortunately. Nick Fit's gotten a lot of new toys recently and has gotten a few more variants. Yes, I have seen the Nick's Fit deck, which is an enchantment-based Nick Fit version. That has an Academy Rector package, and it lets you tutor up a lot of really, really stupid enchantments, ranging from like the Curse of Death's Hold type stuff that shrinks your creatures, to like there's a really expensive one that like at the beginning of your upkeep you sack a creature or lose 5 life. Like sometimes they'll get you with like Dovescape or random things like that, and Humility. So there's a lot of weird things that can happen in that deck. And yeah, like there's a Nick Fit Sneak Attack hybrid deck as well. That the first time I saw that, I just got absolutely devastated by it because I had no idea what was going on. And apparently this is just the night of waiting. Wait for my opponent through their entire clock, spend 4 minutes in the queue. Wait. I don't even really have anything like super interesting queued up to talk about. Like I'm halfway through editing an article for Thraben University. There haven't particularly been any interesting D&T decks in the last couple of days. So let's just play some Magic. Grizzlepuff. Opponent was last seen on Grixis Delver. I will keep this hand on the draw versus Grixis Delver. We have a removal spell for their first threat, and a Wasteland as a follow-up, and then a handful of okay cards in the matchup. So I'm going to adjust my spreadsheet at the beginning of this match here. All right. So I'm going to fetch while the fetching's good and I can't get stifled. We'll fetch for a basic so I can't get wasted. And we'll try to send this Deathright Shaman to the Shadow Realm. We succeeded. Oh man, now the chat's talkative all of a sudden. Oh man, Grizzlepuff's Bob Huang? I love him. He's great. How does Bob feel about Wasteland? That's the real question. No! Alright, you win this round, Bob. Again, I'm just going to play around Stifle here. Bob loves Wasteland half of the time. The half where he's getting to do it. Yep. So I'm very considerably behind on tempo, but my hand is solid. My next turn probably involves Recruiter of the Guard for Stoneforge Mystic, and trying to get a Stoneforge Mystic, trying to get a piece of equipment in play to deal with his board. This would be a pretty sweet Stifle. A Cabal Therapy here is really rough. Like, if he gets to Cabal Therapy, Blind Name Stoneforge, like, Flashback Name Flicker Wisp or something like that, my ability to end this game decreases drastically. Not quite ready to trade a Recruiter for an Elemental token yet. So much stuff. This currently seems like a Jete game, but it's close with Sword of Fire and Ice. We'll play this Revoker into a Daze if my opponent has one. Yep. And that's why we didn't just jam the Jete there. That's rough. Oh, Forked Bolt. Gross. Bob, why? So this hits Recruiter for 1, me for 1. I take 6, 9, 10, 11, and then I'm just dead? Did that just happen? Yep, that just happened. But we're gonna show him. We're gonna show him. We're gonna get him here, guys. You ready? We're gonna Wasteland ourselves. Hold priority. Wasteland ourselves. Concede. Got him. Alright, so game 1, lost to opposing creatures. Like, my opponent had a lot of dudes there. We took care of one with Swords to Plowshares, but then after that, there was, like, follow-up Deathrite Delver. Into bringing that in before. I forget. So we boarded out Revokers. We boarded out Recruiters. We boarded out PNK, and then we left that in the board before, I think is what we did. Yeah, like, basic planes, it was painful. Like, there wasn't a lot that I could do there. I just lost, and there's no other way to put that. This hand is solid. I will keep this. I think I'll just lead on Caracas this time. Delver. Sure. Don't really want to draw that second Rest in Peace. That's not great. I don't know why so many of my opponents keep Daze on the draw. That seems like a very poor prospect. But, like, he must know what he... Oh, flipping to Marsh Casualties? That's just rude. Like, he must know what he's doing. I'm going to go ahead and play out this Rest in Peace here. Since I already have the lands I need to cast the stuff in my hand, I would rather just avoid the chance that I get randomly Gurmag Anglered. Alright, double blind flip there is brutal. I need to draw removal spells. The wing mare counts as one, and we might be putting Cavern on Pegasus depending on where our next turn goes. Geez, another Delver? Rude. I'm not going to put it on Pegasus. He's got another counterspell, like, so be it. I probably wouldn't beat another counterspell anyway. Alright, we are getting super nut-drawed here. And let's just see if this Delver flips blind again for the Rubbins. Do another Marsh Casualties? Bob doesn't get to kill us. Well, that was brutal. So game 2, triple Delver, double Marsh Casualties. Gross. Gross is the only thing that I have to say to that. We were not beating that draw in a million years. Note that that entire match took like 5 minutes instead of like the 35 minutes it took me to play my last round against Grixis Delver because my opponent was so slow. So here's our deck list. Pretty happy with it so far. Feels really good. You know, this is only 2 cards off of what I was running before. Playing one more Cavern and one less Rishadenport. And I dropped the Palace Jailer to try out Restoration Angel again. This is probably fine. Let's see if I have any data on my opponent. Not for Legacy. Looks like they play a decent amount of Magic. I'll keep this in the dark. So I get a curve of like Mom, Thalia, Magus. It's awkward that my one mana source is Wastelandable, but like, so be it. This is the sort of curve that can beat, I think, most decks of the format. Cloud Post. Alright. So we're probably playing against Big Eldrazi. We're on the play. That's basically the best draw in our deck, because it means we can continue to cast the rest of the cards in my hand. All I see are mountains. Alright. The game is still afoot. My opponent is not just dead.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I currently have my opponent on a 3-turn clock. Or actually, it'll be a 2-turn clock with either one of these creatures. So I think I will go ahead and just Recruiter here. Not sure what I'm going to get, though. So, Revoker for that Monolith seems fine. They get 1 chance at casting a big bad spell. I can just get Flicker Wisp to blink whatever they do. I can get P and K so that burning them out is a possibility. I don't think I want to do something so slow as get a, like a Stoneforge Mystic piece. What am I scared of my opponent playing? An All is Dust plus a land would be bad. Like a big Ballista or Endbringer would be kind of annoying. Something that holds the ground is also slightly annoying. I guess I have the Restoration Angel for if they get a big fat ground creature. I think I'm going to grab a Revoker. Well, the fact that I can't cast Wisp now is a very good reason to not get Wisp. Yes, I agree. Alright, there's a Dynamo. And a Thought-Knots here. Okay. So I'm going to attack in with everything, I think, and then whatever my opponent blocks, I'll Resto. So my opponent would block the Magus of the Moon. I'd push 4 damage, putting them to 7. And then I have them dead in 3 hits with the Resto only. Alternatively, I just like play more patiently and flicker the Recruiter of the Guard to get a Phyrexian Revoker. The issue is that I can't bring that down to this turn. So my opponent is going to get like another turn to cast a big bad fatty from their hand. And if I like get the Revoker this turn, then like they can use their mana to untap the Grim Monolith, and if I revoke, they still have a bunch of mana on their following turn. So I think I just like getting aggressive. All right, really glad that my opponent conceded. Like, my opponent might not have been 100% dead there. They might have had something else that they could have done. And, like, I'm kind of on a tempo plan at this point since I can't cast the Wisp that's in my hand and my Vial isn't doing anything. So, pretty happy about all of that. Alright, so win against Kool-Aid G. Game 1, win with Magus and additional pressure. We'll be on the draw for Game 2. Alright, so what is going to be great? Cataclysm is going to be amazing. Relic Warder will be very good. Recruiter to find Relic Warder or Revoker or Flicker Wisp will be pretty great. And like then we'll have a handful of like maybe cards. We're going to start by boarding out all of our Mother of Runes. They do nothing. And then I just have to decide like whether or not I want to trim anything. Like, there are very different parts of the deck that I can care about. Like, against the, like, potential, like, Thought Not Seer Reality Smasher portion of the deck, Path to Exile is really, really good. But against, like, other big mana plays, it's not necessarily great. So whether or not I want more of these is a real question. And then I also want to consider, like, how much I care about some of these taxing effects that can come down at awkward times. This probably isn't a long, grindy game for P and K, so maybe a path is better than that. This isn't particularly a Jitte matchup. Like, they're probably going to go bigger than Jitte pretty quickly, but I don't know that I want to pull it. So I might just play like one extra path and call it good at that. I think I like this. I will keep this. This is a very disruptive hand. That is really annoying. Assuming it goes on Vile. Yeah. My opponent is really resource light right now. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just snipe their expedition map. It's not how I want to use a Revoker with this one. Replace plows with path. Yeah, remind me to do that in between games. Alright, so my opponent does have a bunch of the smaller side in their deck. I'm not sure if I want to play this Thalia or this Revoker. I would sort of like to save the Revoker for a Mana Rock. But, like, they already have 5 mana available at this point. If I draw another land a couple of turns down the line, I can just hardcast this Batterskull, and that'll be pretty sweet. But if my opponent has more Mana Rocks, then having this Thalia in play is pretty good. I think I like the idea of, like, play Thalia this turn and then plan on porting after this point.
And like now that my opponent has shown me matter reshapers too, Mad Matt, I might actually just end up like putting the paths in the deck as well. So P&K's in the sideboard. I think I'll put this on Elemental. And I think porting is more valuable than playing the Revoker here. Alright, well, Thought-Knot gets one of these pieces of equipment. Probably the Batterskull. No, the Sword of Fire, nice. Alright, relatively happy with that draw. It's awkward, though, because I can't, like, use this to get rid of the Thought-Knot Seer and put the Batterskull in. So my opponent isn't anywhere close to activating Eye of Ugin. So I think I'm just going to go on the aggro plan here. With a land draw, this is also very good. Alright. So for Eldrazi spells, my opponent already has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, assuming I port them. So I'm just going to go ahead and play out the Revoker on Voltaic Key, and I might use Resto to reset it, depending on what all happens. Sort of nice thing about my board is that if my opponent does something like cast an All Is Dust, I still have 2 creatures around after that. So I haven't actually lost that much value to that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, assuming I don't swing with the Stoneforge, that puts my opponent to 12. It's going to be a 3-turn clock no matter what. So it's 1, 2, 3, yeah, all right. Alright, did that one in short order with not too much work. So game 2, win with aggro after evoker on expedition map. My opponent didn't draw particularly well that match, just kind of if I'm being honest there. I did not have to do a lot to kill them. Alright, I assume that's just like some sort of spam in the chat there, so if one of my mods wants to get rid of that person, that would be great. So I have no data on my opponent. This hand does nothing. Like, I have a mom, but I have nothing to protect. I have too many lands. I have no game plan with this hand. It's not where I want to be. I'm gonna mulligan this one. I'm gonna mulligan this one too. This hand's terrible, but I'm not going any lower than this. Lost Mystery, the Pearl the Dome user, whoever that is, I assume it's just a bot, you know. They put a random link in the chat and just say "wow" next to it, trying to get people to click it. You know, that's the kind of usual like malware links that we see. So I just wanted to preemptively get rid of that. Looks like we're probably playing against a white Eldrazi deck of some nature, or like the hybrid Eldrazi Death and Taxes deck. Yeah, that's why, you know, I get rid of that sort of thing. Unclear whether or not it will be better to port my opponent or play my own Thalia. I'm going to play my own Thalia, though. So Mad Matt says, would you have boarded out some Thalias in this match in retrospect? Maybe. Like, it's hard to say. This is a Thought Nuts here. Oops, Suppression Field. So this card is sweet, and it is very, very good against my current hand because, like, it effectively shuts off my Thalia and Caracas abilities. Yeah, the suppression field probably indicates that it is the Soldier Stompy deck, but like we can't know for sure until we see a couple more cards because like you can put suppression field in the white Eldrazi deck just as easily. All right. So not Soldier Stompy, just like a white prison deck of the same general ilk. So we get to reset that Chalice there, and then I'll get to Swords to Plowshares, this Angel of Sanctions, to get my stuff back. So I actually like my position quite a bit right now. Council's Judgment, my Flicker Wisp. You bet. Aether Vial is not as good as it looks, folks, because of the suppression field. Let's just throw that fact out there right now. So despite the fact that it's bad, I do think I want to put this Vial into play so that at some point I can pay 2 mana for a P and K. Yeah, Jitte also costs 2 more to equip. I am very aware of that fact. I'm going to offer the Thalia trade, even though I have this Caracas here, to, like, bounce that opposing Thalia, because, like, it's just so bad. Like, just activating this Caracas is so bad on the board, and my opponent will probably accept the trade. Ooh, they do not. Interesting. Yeah, Stoneforge Mystic is 4 to put in a Batter Skull, which is why I didn't Stoneforge there. It's awkward. Blade Splicer. Okay. That explains why they didn't want to take the Thalia trade. It's really unfortunate that that was a fetch land. So it enters tapped. So I'm going to pass the turn and then use Vial to put in Stoneforge. I'm going to get the sword. I'm okay with losing the sword. I'd kind of like to still have the Batter Skull in the deck. Suppression field is really annoying. Like, minus the suppression field, I don't care about any of my opponent's cards at all. The suppression field is cripplingly good against my draw, though. Yeah, I take all of that. Actually, maybe I don't. Sorry. This suppression field fetch land situation is some shit as well. I might need to, like, just trade with the Thalia. To just, like, open up other lines. No, I can't just, like, Caracas their Thalia because of this suppression field. It's messing me up on a number of levels. So I'm going to go ahead and swap Thalias here. This will let any creatures I have enter untapped. Which is a big deal when, like, my ability to do anything is being slowed down. Like, this Wasteland's going to enter tapped. Or, like, excuse me, the Wasteland would have entered tapped had I not gotten rid of the Thalia. So now I can pay, like, 4 to equip this Jitte, but then, like, in order to use the counters, I need to, like, pay 2 mana. It's a bad situation. So not a good spot to be in. I'll go ahead and equip that to give myself the possibility of getting some Jitte counters. My opponent also may or may not realize how, like, the Jitte is going to work with their suppression field, just, like, out of not being comfortable using it. So I'll take all of that this turn. Yeah, I think I'm more or less dead. So I'm going to cast Revoker, revoke their Chrome Mox. I'll double block Thought-Knot Seer when my opponent attacks in. I'll pay 2 to remove a Jitte counter to kill the Thought-Knot Seer. That's a start, but it's not enough to, like, actually win this game. Alright, good game. We'll lose to that. Alright, so we're playing against a white Stompy deck. We are on the draw play. Yeah, we were on the play on a multi 5. Their Resto is better than our Resto. Alright, so what do we board in? We board in additional removal. And these are kind of our maybe pile over here. So we have a lot of medium cards. Magus is probably pretty bad. And then a lot of our cards are medium power level. Like, our Thalias aren't really great. They have their own Thalias and their own Caracas, but it's still something with First Strike to stop the bleeding. And that might be good enough. PNK is really bad against Suppression Field, but good against a lot of the rest of their deck, so I might actually still want that even though it's awkward. Maybe like a Crusader is just better than like Wingmares here. Like, it can trade with a Thought-Knot Seer or like a Blade Splicer token if need be. Unsure how much time I have to be recruitering and like how good Recruiter actually is. Like, my opponent might be coming at me fast enough where like I don't have time to Recruiter for like the right piece that I need, especially if my vials get shut off by Suppression Field. So maybe like I'm not supposed to play those and I'm supposed to just like keep these Thalias in the deck. This is not a matchup that I have a lot of experience playing. I'll do the split. I don't think Cataclysm is particularly good. I'm going to keep this and fetch on turn 1. Again, like, since they have like Chrome Mox and like Ancient Tombs and such for mana acceleration, I need to be very aware of what my opponent can do. So like, why don't I like Cataclysm? I think my opponent is frequently going to have a good mix of artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands and yeah, so like, I'm not going to be sweeping all of their stuff off of the board with a Cataclysm. Fucking Suppression Field. So annoying. So on my next turn, I think I want to use the Flicker Wisp to like flicker Suppression Field so that I can fetch without any issues. Which means that I either want to just like play Sword this turn or play a Recruiter this turn. Probably play a recruiter. I'm not 100% sure what I'm getting, though. Okay, Relic Order. Relic Order seems great. Yeah, because that will let me Relic Order the suppression field on my turn. And then, like, fetch and dump in Batterskull. That seems like a great turn. Really glad my opponent didn't have something like Aven Mind Sensor to mess with me. Anything is possible in this shell. I'm going to diversify my threats here, rather than just throwing it on the Batterskull to gain some extra life. If my opponent has something like a Swords to Plowshares, I would love for it to get pointed right here instead of at, say, Leon and Relic Order. Don't even actually care about that happening all that much. I guess, like, the Resto was something that I could have considered. I kind of thought my opponent might have something like a Wrath of God after not, like, tapping 4 mana and then not doing anything with it on their turn. Yeah, you can Thought Knot me. That's fine. They should take the Flicker Wisp here. Oh, they don't. Interesting.
If my opponent double blocks, I'll kill the Thought Knot. Kind of expecting my opponent to have something like an Angel of Sanctions here. There it is. That makes sense given like their attack patterns from their blocking pattern from the previous turn. So I can just put this sword on the Thalia, lose my Germ, but then the Thalia can like first strike, kill one of their guys, which seems fine because either way I get a sweet thing. Well, I guess one way I get a sweet thing, the other way I just get a thing. What does that do? And do I like even want to cast that this turn? Because if I wait, I can just use it to remove a blocker on the following turn. I guess I could just like blink my Stoneforge and get a Jitte. And then like I can pay 3 mana to cast the Jitte the next turn. Another 3 mana to equip. And then like just get some extra value off of those bodies. But it might be better to just like not cast the Flicker Wisp this turn and then use it to blank the Angel of Sanctions. Again, this suppression field makes life awkward. I can use it to like try to draw a land with Thought Knot Seer. Hey, I did it. I drew a land.
Ugh. That's really annoying. So I can pay 2 mana, wasteland them, and then play 4 mana to move the sword to the Flicker Wisp. Guess that's what's happening. And we'll see if I just get absolutely wrecked by a Restoration Angel. I do not. Or maybe I do still. No, I don't. Great. Being out-taxed? Yeah, I certainly am being out-taxed. There is absolutely no question about it. I am on the wrong side of the tax equation here. So now this is the embalm on the Angel of Sanctions. So this gets the Batterskull again for a little while. But like I get to play Thalia, equip Thalia, and then like Thalia gets to bash into this stuff, and I'm like back in the same. Ooh, on the sword. Interesting. I find it weird that they did that. Alright. So my Sword of Fire and Ice is gone, right? Yeah, it's under that thing. So I can go 2 Stoneforge, 4 Vial in a thing, and also play a Thalia. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Like, if my opponent has something like a Council's Judgment, they're going for my Batterskull, not my Jitte. One, two, three, four, five. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not that big of a deal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to equip. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah. Boy, that's annoying. And this requires the chump block from my opponent here. From a creature. It doesn't have to be any specific one, just a creature.
Is this only game 2? Do I have to do another game of this if I win? Yes. Alright. So we're on the play and we win. Or, sorry, I gotta fix this. So game 1 result, loss. Game 2, we're on the play and we win. Game 3 will be on the draw. So game 2, win with equipment, really. Like, the equipment eventually took over the game. I wonder if I'm supposed to, like, take out Ether Vial in this matchup if they have both Containment Priest and Suppression Field. I don't know. I kind of want more bodies, and being on the draw, that Vial might just, like, never do anything. Is that crazy, chat? Because, like, I could just bring in, like, one more Recruiter, Thalia, Wingmare, and just plan on playing a more fair game. That's weird, but it might be right. Kind of want to do that. Or maybe not Recruiter, but bring in a Containment Priest to stop their Restoration Angel value. That seems fine. And it also turns on my Flicker Wisp as an additional removal spell. Alright. Chat's silent. Chat has no opinion on it. So I'll run it. This is a really weak 7-card hand because my mana, like, simply doesn't work. If I put this on human, then it doesn't cast any of the other cards in my hand, and I can't cast my Swords to Plowshares either. So I'll mulligan that. This hand's awful. Again, we have a spam bot. So if I scry and get a land, this hand is reasonable. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep it. I think if I go down too many cards in this matchup, like, I'm just gonna get outvalued. Yeah, so now we have a land. Life's good. There's that frickin' Suppression Field again, being really annoying. So I'm going to try to minimally tax my opponent, and we'll see if it does anything.
will attack in. My opponent will probably Restoration Angel and all sorts of Plowshares it. Thought Knot's pretty good. We'll see what my opponent takes. Like, it's real choices. Stoneforge gets a Batter Skull, but I can't put it in right now due to Suppression Field. Relic Warder answers Suppression Field, but I don't have a second white source yet. Containment Priest stops some of their blinking shenanigans. Alright, they choose the Relic Warder. They value the Suppression Field quite a bit. And now the question is, do I want to spend my turn wastelanding them off of that Ancient Tomb? Because they don't seem to have a lot going on. Alternatively, I can just, like, Stoneforge, and if I rip a land, then I get to Batterskull, and that beats their board currently. I can also, like, Recruiter for a Flicker Wisp, and then plan on, like, Flicker Wisp Containment Priest to get rid of that Thought Knot Seer, which is fine as well. I think I like that line. Alright, another one of those things. So I'm doing this to set up the Flicker Wisp as a permanent removal spell on my turn, and I intend on just chump blocking with this Mother of Runes since I'm never, ever, ever paying 4 mana to protect. Oh my god, chat. Oh my god, chat. That just happened. That just happened. Wow, we won this game. We won this game so hard. I'm just waiting the 30 seconds for, like, the chat to catch up and just, like, explode at, like, how awesome that is for me. Holy punt! Womp womp indeed. I should have screenshotted that one. That was a good one. So, boarding in that Containment Priest proved to be very, very good. Alright, so game 3, win with Containment Priest, OP, Blinks, Thought Knot with Resto, and then I Wisp the Resto. So, like, there's no guarantee that my opponent was going to like do things that mattered in that match anyway. I was pretty well in control of it, but that was a terrible, terrible punt on their end. That was really, really rough. Okay, so thoughts on Resto after that league? It seemed like a really reasonable card. I was never really unhappy to have it in my hand. It did some neat stuff. My opponent's Resto Angels were better than mine. So this time around, just to recap for anyone who wasn't here for the entire thing, we had wins against Miracles, Big Eldrazi, and White Stompy, and 2 losses to Grixis Delver. We played much, much better than our first opponent and much, much faster. And then our second opponent was Bob Wong, and he essentially just nutted us. I had very little interaction against him. He had a pair of very creature-heavy draws, and I got destroyed. So deck list feels pretty good. Like it was a relatively easy 3-2 there. I wasn't really planning on streaming tonight, but some of my plans fell through. So thank you for those of you who joined in. I'm looking to grow the stream here, so if you haven't followed already and you enjoyed my content today, please do follow. I will reward you with bonus streams as I get more followers. At the beginning of the broadcast here, I was sitting at, what do I have, 340. I picked up 2 more followers in this broadcast, so I'm up to 342. When I hit 8 more followers, I will do a bonus stream with a mono white build of some nature. So thank you all for joining me tonight. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. I'll stick around for a minute. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream for tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and throw you into a different Legacy stream. This is Phil Gallagher of Thraben University. Have a good night.